is there a Rico case brewing in the Cowboys backfield?
Don't do that. That's first of all.
What?
Don't because you can't afford to have an actual Rico case. So don't do that. That's not don't do that.
KG, did you even go to law school?
No.
You don't got to go to law school to know about Rico, buddy.
Exactly.
Oh, boy.
Exactly.
Those who know. And that's not even like a subsection. Like just if you understand what a Rico case is, you understand this is not play. This is not jokes.
Well, apparently it's not any joking in the Cowboys backfield, which we'll get to here in just a moment. At Kevin Gray Sports, at Reg Attitude, if you want to get at us on Twitter. Appreciate you joining us on Odyssey and the Odyssey app. The text line 877-881-1053. 877-881-1053. If you want to get in on the conversation coming up in 18 minutes. Kennedy Landry of MLB.com covering all things Texas Rangers going to be joining us here on your home of the Rangers 105 through the fan on their off day. I love how the my tease has the intended effect that I was looking for on the text line. So
wild behavior by a certain Kevin Gray Jr.
I don't understand what the problem is.
That's wild.
That's because we are looking to the Cowboys backfield, and I'm mentioning one Rico Dowdle because apparently, according to Blogging the Boys, Rico Dowdle has been stepping up and making a case to be the second running back behind Tony Pollard.
Yeah, the question being put forward is, can fourth-year running back prospect Rico Dowdle stay healthy and deliver on his potential, right? So the idea is that Rico Dowdle has moved from a place of dark horse to leader among backup running back candidates, right? So one thing that we understand is Tony Pollard is your lead back. He's making $10 million this year. He's on the final year, or he's on a, tag situation, franchise tag situation. He's the one dude that you could say has been in that running back tandem. He's gotten carries and such. Like, he's the dude that is the no-brainer lead in your running back room. But obviously, we understand the way that the football is being played right now, and in some ways, the devaluation of the running back has caused this situation where you can't really give all of the work to one guy. It's not smart. You typically have this separated amongst a few guys, 2, 3 guys, but you really want to keep it to that level. But we understand, and we looked around and we're like, where's the other proven back? And some people looked at, okay, well, Ronald Jones is kind of that, even though he didn't really get any touches last year. And nope. You have the suspension coming in for him for the first 2 games. And there's just some folks that are looking around and they're like, I don't know, man. I'm not sure that that's the one. And so after that, you have Malik Davis, who existed as your third running back last year.
Who flashed quite a bit in preseason and had some opportunities last year, made the most of them as well.
You have Rico Dowdle, who was one of those preseason camp darlings a couple of seasons, but as mentioned, has had some health issues, some injury issues, and then also just has not been able to take that space above Malik Davis behind the other 2 running backs that you already had. And then you have a draft pick in Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State. And I'm already forgetting if he was a 5th or a 6th. 5th, right?
Late round pick.
Thank you for giving me the right terminology to not be wrong.
I got you.
But late round pick, Deuce Vaughn, who it seems like right from when he was drafted, all the conversation was like, yeah, no, he'll be on the roster. Because I know I've seen some people that are like, are we sure he's going to make the 53-man? And that's a reasonable question to ask, except you look at the tenor and the tone that he's talked about. And it doesn't seem like anybody is giving you any reason to pause on the idea that he will indeed be on the 53-man roster, or at the very least will stick around and make it to a practice squad, right? But with that being the case, those are your candidates. Well, I guess there's always the mystery box of, hey, there's Dalvin Cook out there. There's a Zeke return that's possible.
6th round, by the way.
Thank you, sir. But when it comes down to it, the default for you is who when it comes to who is going to be the person to back up your guy in Tony Pollard.
Well, I thought coming into the season it was going to be Malik Davis. As I mentioned, last year.
Malik Davis?
Yeah, had some opportunities, was able to make the most of them a little bit, and I thought coming into this upcoming season that he would be the number 2 guy behind, Tony Pollard. But I think this conversation underscores something that I think for Cowboys fans is starting to become a little bit more of an issue, which is, yes, you believe Tony Pollard is going to have a really nice year coming off of a career year last year, but he is coming off of a significant leg injury. The depth behind him and the quality of that depth behind him leaves a little bit to be desired. And more importantly for me, there's not a lot of physicality in that backfield right now as it stands. With, yes, the lightning and the quickness of a Tony Pollard and what he's able to do in the open field. And I know he's a good runner in between the tackles, can hit the hole very well, can be able to get north and south when he is able to, but more so on the edges going east and west is where he's really dynamic. There's a little bit of physicality to be desired right now in this running back room. And I don't know where that comes from necessarily between Ronald Jones, Rico Dowdle, and Malik Davis, and how they go about finding some of that Ezekiel Elliott before they get to the start of this upcoming season.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they're necessarily looking for that. It's one of the reasons why when we were having the whole run the damn football conversation with Mike McCarthy, or probably erroneously for far too long, I looked up and I was like, hey, man, they don't really have the profile for that, what you would think of in that way. But yeah, you're right. I'm not sure that that's something that is in their situation. But then also, I know that some people have talked about, hey, man, they have this fullback that they have actually tried to go with. And I've already forgotten my boy's name, and I really do apologize because
Hunter Lepke.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was like, it's an L name, and I just can't. It wasn't coming back to me. But yes, Hunter Lepke, who people look up have told me that if you need him to tote the rock, he can tote the rock. And maybe they look at it and they go, if we need the big bruising couple of yards, we can do that on the cheap there.
Yeah, and it reminds you a little bit of Mike McCarthy's Green Bay Packer days with a guy in John Kuhn, who was a longtime fullback there and a name that was a staple in that running back room for Mike McCarthy when he was with the Green Bay Packers. And he could fill out some of that role, Lepke, with the ability to do a little bit of pass catching, get those tough, dirty yards that you may be looking for when you need something on 3rd and short, 4th and short as well, to be able to help out with some of that. But again, one of the things that this team is going to miss, no matter how you felt about Ezekiel Elliott and the decline that he had as a player, because there was an obvious steady decline as a player for Ezekiel Elliott, one thing that he could do and still do very well, put the ball in the end zone. 3rd and short, 4th and short, you knew exactly what you were getting. And you say, well, where's the value in that based off of what he was making and then what you were asking him to take in terms of a pay cut? Doesn't necessarily jive there, but at the same time, someone is going to fill some of that role when you have the opportunities to do it within this offense.
And there's something to be said for the idea that Tony Pollard had some of those situations as well. And one thing that Tony Pollard does pretty well, if there's enough of a gap, if there's a crack, he can hit that with an explosion.
Yep.
And try and pick up those yards. It's not going to be the same big bruising way that I guess historically we think of when we see it that way, but I feel like that's going to operate a little different. Plus, and I know that this isn't the most comfortable thing to say, you have a big quarterback that you can use in 3rd and short type situation that I think helps, maybe make this work a little bit. But the reason why this comes up, the whole conversation about is Rico Dowdle emerging as the leader of the other running backs, is it's this thing that, some of the coaches like Mike McDaniel has said, it's the bane of my existence, basically. We have rosters. You have depth charts that are put out before we get to preseason games. And the depth chart that was put out has Tony Pollard clearly as the first running back. And after that, it has Rico Dowdle before Malik Davis, before Deuce Vaughn, before Hunter Lepke. And so the question is, how much stock do you put into the depth chart that has been put out by the Dallas Cowboys that says going into, if the season was to start today, which it is not, right? I don't want to put too much effort into that, but if the season was to start today, Tony Pollard would be your starting running back and Rico Dowdle would be the one getting secondary snaps.
I think honestly it speaks more to the idea that somebody has a chance to take the reins of the backup job. And Rico so far in camp has been able to take some of those reins with some of the good reps that he's had in training camp for the Cowboys. So this is an opportunity that is up for grabs between Dowdle, Davis, and Vaughn to see during preseason who can have an impact based on what is being asked of these running backs to do within this offense behind Tony Pollard. But, I mean, good for Dowdle to be able to put himself in this position where it's the initial depth chart that we're looking at, obviously not the final one, but when you look at this team and what they're going to be asking a lot of these guys to do, where does that depth come from? Who steps up and takes the reins of that backup job? Because depending on what happens with Tony Pollard, again, not saying that he's going to get himself injured once again, but we know that there's a possibility coming off of what he just came and dealt with the broken leg from last year. This could be a vital position for someone to be able to have to step in and be a major impact player at the running back spot within this offense. So Dowdle, Davis, and Vaughn have a chance to be able to earn that running backup job at this point here.
And just kind of trying to jog my memory, Tony Pollard is listed, right? And obviously these weights are not always, exact. Tony Pollard is listed 6 foot 209, right? Ronald Jones, because we were talking about it before we got into this segment. There's a lot of people that were like, well, okay, Ronald Jones is clearly going to be that pair. And people talked about him like, oh yeah, he's going to be a little bit of a bruiser. He's not that. He is listed at 5'11", 205. And he absolutely existed more as what we would change of pace type situation. Rico Dowdle, and this is not notable, but Rico Dowdle was listed at 5'11", 213.
So he's a little bit bigger than Jones.
Yeah, I mean, by the ever so slightest.
Yeah.
It's not going to be notable where we're talking about 225, where we're talking about a little bit more weighty, but he does have a little bit more weight, and I wonder if that factors in at all when it comes down to it. And again, it's what we're talking about, 4 or 5 pounds in that particular instance, and that's off of a listing, right? We don't know if they typically carry heavier or if they typically carry lighter. Those things can kind of shift, but I do wonder if maybe that has some level of a feel to it, or if we're just in this place where we're parsing a first preseason game depth chart, and ultimately the likes of what you want in a bigger back that maybe can handle some of those instances are either still the dude in Hunter Lepke or a dude that's out there in Ezekiel Elliott or Dalvin Cook or something like that.
From the 214, Deuce Vaughn, better workout. From the 469, Deuce Vaughn. A lot of people hoping to see Deuce Vaughn be able to maybe take some of the reins of that backup job as well. Now, look, obviously we know that his size is going to be a little bit of an issue when it comes to blocking and what happens in terms of some of those passing situations where he's going to be asked to block a little bit. But if you're going to get the ball in his hands in the screen game, get him out in the open field, let him do some things in that way, you can see him as being a part of this offense. But it's really, for me, it's going to come down between Dowdle and Davis here when it comes to who is going to take the reins of that job. Speaking of running back, can y'all hit for me cut number 8, please? Cut number 8, because speaking of running backs, Shady McCoy was at Cowboys practice
For a little bit.
He hung out. He hung out there for a little bit. Apparently, he thought he saw Tony Pollard, but in all actuality, this is what he said.
I think the Cowboys will struggle, even though, and being at that camp, I've noticed so fast how talented that group is on offense and on defense.
No, that defensive group, that's a top 4.
Oh, my God.
Dudes everywhere. Length, speed. Everywhere.
Yes. And on offense. I mean, you bring Brandon Cooks over there as your number 2 receiver, like that's really, really good. Tony Pollard, he looks good.
Okay, he does.
Right? And then an all-pro receiver in CeeDee Lamb, you have everything you need there. Right, with a solid offensive line. Now, granted, we'll see what happens with Zach Martin, but overall, that's a talented offense.
There's only one problem, gentlemen.
What's the problem?
Tony Pollard wasn't there. In fact, he wasn't even in the state. In fact, he was back here in Texas,
Having a baby?
celebrating the birth of his second child.
Baby girl, correct?
That's right.
Shout out to Tony Pollard.
What the hell is LeSean McCoy talking about?
In the most generous interpretation, which he does not necessarily deserve. He did not necessarily say that he saw Tony Pollard look good. He just said Tony Pollard looks good. And as a general statement, that is correct. Tony Pollard,
Well, you're
particularly when he
stretching
plays
it right
football,
now. You're stretching it for
looks
him.
good.
When he's actually at practice.
Sure.
Practicing. Which LeSean.
Can you isolate that for me, Rodrigo? Where he's talking about, Brandon Cooks. Tony Pollard looks good. Like I do want to hear that one more time and see if I, as the defense attorney in this instance for LeSean McCoy, got him off the case. No? All right. That's fine.
They don't, you don't want to hear LeSean McCoy anymore. We'll have some more mediocre audio.
Which is tough because LeSean McCoy is like a really good running back in the history of this league.
He was a talented running back.
And so
a damn good one.
I would very much like to take his opinion on running back situations, except I've heard him talk. You know what I mean? Like, what am I supposed to do here? I'm
on a plethora of things.
I'm trying to be like, let me hear what this fantastic professional football player had to say, except I know who you are. So one more time. One more again. Let's
we
hear
got it? All right.
We don't give him the benefit of the doubt, or maybe you won't. I can't tell you what to do. But is he in fact saying that he saw Tony Pollard at camp, which he didn't, look good?
Tony Pollard, he looks good.
Give me a little bit of the runway. You can't just drop me on it. Just right before that, where he starts the whole run of the sentence is what I wanted, you know? Because he did talk about...
You bring Brandon Cooks over there as your number 2 receiver? Like, that's really, really good. Tony Pollard, he looks good.
The inference is that he was there and he looked at Tony Pollard and said that he looks good.
Okay. Look, that's fine.
That's a no for me, dog.
All right, no problem.
It's a no for me, dog.
I was trying to give some deference to someone who played the game, because people hit you on the other side like, what do you know?
Look,
you ain't played the game. He played the game. I tried.
Look,
I gave him.
Giving deference to guys who played the game don't necessarily work out well. Greg Jennings, Bart Scott. Need I go on? Maybe later on you'll hear some more mediocre audio from someone like Greg Jennings. But the Cowboys got a running back situation that they're going to be dealing with behind Tony Pollard. We'll see how that plays out. Starting on Saturday, the Cowboys host the Jacksonville Jaguars in preseason action at AT&T Stadium on your home of the Cowboys.